Kids are stressful, and Kid Jesus was no different. And that's what we're talking about today.
So we're back in the book of Luke again, and very little is recorded about Jesus' childhood. But we do have a couple of stories that we're going to talk about today. One when Jesus is a baby, and one when he is 12 years old. And both of them involve a trip to the temple in Jerusalem. And there's also this little bit in there about them having to travel to Egypt. But today we're talking about what was Kid Jesus like?
Yeah, so the first one of those two stories involving newborn infant baby Jesus. What is it, like 8 pound, 6 ounce infant baby Jesus? So Joseph and Mary have to take Jesus to the temple for his ceremony of purification, his dedication, his circumcision. So this is not long after he's been born, and they have to go and offer sacrifice as part of the Jewish religious faith. And so they go and they offer a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons, which is required by the law. You can find that in Leviticus. And as they're there, they meet a guy named Simeon. And Simeon is this old man. Luke says that he's God-fearing and that he has been waiting for Israel to be saved, for Israel to be redeemed, for the nation to receive the Messiah. And Simeon had a promise that he would not die. God had told him he would not die until he saw the Messiah. So he sees Jesus, a little infant baby Jesus, there in the temple area. And I love this. He says, "Now, Lord, you have kept your promise, and you may let your servant die and go in peace. With my own eyes, I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared." And then he says this, "in the presence," and this is a little bit what we're talking about today, "in the presence of all peoples, a light to reveal your will to the Gentiles and bring glory to your people Israel." And so Simeon blesses Jesus. He prophesies to Mary. He actually tells Mary that Jesus is going to be a sign from God. People are going to speak against him. He's going to reveal their secret thought. It's like everything gets laid out right here in the very beginning. But then he also tells Mary that sorrow is going to pierce her heart like a sword. And so just this amazing moment. And then even there's another little side story with Anna, who's a prophetess of God. She was married for a little while, and then she's been widowed for a long time. And she's a worshiper. She's been fasting. She's been waiting on the Messiah, and she sees Jesus, and she speaks about the redemption of Israel, and also prophesies over him and Mary and Joseph. And so just an amazing first story. The second story, 12-year-old Jesus, pre-adolescent or pre-teen Jesus. Middle school Jesus.
Yeah, middle school Jesus. So it's the Passover festival. Jesus is 12 years old, and of course they've gone to Jerusalem, and Mary and Joseph are on their way home, and they're literally like a whole day they have traveled, it says. Yeah. And they realize, we don't know where Jesus is. We left him at the temple. We must have left him at the temple. So if you've ever felt
right,
but so they go back, and Mary is frantic. Joseph's frantic, and they find him at the temple, and he's sitting there having conversations in the temple with all of the religious leaders there, and they said, why have you done this to us?
Right.
You've had us worried sick, and we went a whole day without finding you, or 3 days. They actually searched for 3 days for him, but they had gone a whole day without him. And Jesus looks at them, and he's like, "Why did you have to look for me? Didn't you know that I had to be in my Father's house?" Talking about the temple. And so Jesus returns with them. Obviously, he goes back with them, and he's obedient to them. And the Bible tells us that Mary treasured these things in her heart.
I love that Mary fusses at him. Yeah. Because Mary doesn't say, how could we have done this?
We left the Son
Right.
of God.
She's like, why have you done this? And I feel this story makes me feel good about being a parent.
Yeah.
Because Mary and Joseph couldn't keep up with one kid.
Right.
And God's given us 5.
Yeah.
And we haven't left one anywhere. We did lose one for a few minutes on a trip at Disney World, but we found him.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
we've never gone a whole day
not
knowing.
Right. And of course, they're traveling in a caravan.
Right. They would have been like, oh, he's back there with
with an aunt, an uncle. He's playing with his cousins. He's fine. So obviously there's that. But then the interesting thing is, so Mary and Joseph are traveling probably with like a family caravan, like, bunches and bunches of aunts, uncles, cousins, stuff like that. People from Nazareth are coming to the festival. But when they have to turn around, most likely it's just them. And so what felt very safe being in this big city with all their family now is just the two of them. And they're searching frantically. And so
they have to go a whole day back.
Yeah.
Not knowing.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So we have 2 stories, 12 years apart, same location. Both of them, it's so interesting that both of them are centered right here in the temple, and where, these prophetic words came. 12 years later, Jesus is still amazing people. And kind of our first glimpse after that prophetic word from Simeon and Anna. Now Jesus is in the temple teaching and amazing people. So I have a fun fact.
Okay.
So we're going to try to throw these in from time to time, kind of a little fun Bible fact. The fact that Luke tells us that Mary and Joseph have to offer 2 young pigeons, 2 birds. What we discover in Leviticus is that's an acceptable substitute for people who can't afford a lamb and a bird to sacrifice in the purification ceremony. So I think that's just interesting.
Yeah.
Like I mean, if we're going to make up this story, right? And some people think that that the gospel, all this stuff about Jesus, just kind of made up. If we're going to make this up, we probably wouldn't make Jesus's family have to give the poor person's offering. Yeah. If we're talking about a king, we're going to have him, this is like royal imagery and glowing. And they brought the lamb and they got, they did. No, this is a different kind of king. Yeah. This is a king that can kind of identify with everybody. This is not Caesar's king. Yeah. This is a different kind of king. It's not what people expected. And so I think that's just really interesting.
Yeah, and I love the idea of, so we know that Luke wasn't there on the scene when these 2 stories actually happened, but he would have learned of them about Jesus and written them down. And so, I can just picture Mary. I know it doesn't say this in the Bible, but I can picture Mary. They're sitting, over dinner as they would have. They're like, tell us a story. You know how you do when you're with family, like, tell us a story about Jesus when he was a kid. And she's like, well, let me tell you, this and this and this. Well, what was it like to, at this ceremony? Like, did you have a lamb? How could you guys have afforded a lamb? No, actually, And so I think that even those that were listening to these stories that would record them, they would have been sitting there amazed, because even the disciples would have been like, wow, like even Jesus, he was like me. He didn't, his family didn't have, this or that. And
so you can imagine Luke interviewing Mary all these years later to because that's what he tells us, right? He's like, I interviewed all these people and I did all this research and study, and I want to present to you the news about this story about Jesus. And so, that would be so interesting. Luke just kind of sitting there asking questions like that. And so in these 2 chapters, what's really interesting, and I think it's what Simeon prophesies. He says this is this is what God has prepared in front of all people for the whole world. Like Luke is presenting this for the whole world, not just Israel. And what's interesting is right here in the first 2 chapters, right at the beginning of the story, everybody can find themselves. Yeah. Like you've got. Earlier, you've got the old couple who couldn't have a baby, who are getting up there in years, and then they have John the Baptist, right? Like the guy who becomes John. And then you have this young girl, this teenage preteen girl, Mary. You've got her husband, a little bit older probably, Joseph. So you've got this young couple. You've got the newborn Jesus. You've also got the preteen Jesus or
the awkward Jesus.
The awkward the Jesus with like teeth that haven't fully, like his head size is too small. So you've got that. You've got even I read one person talked about like that would have been young adult Jesus.
Yeah.
Because
he
would
have been a man.
By 15, 16, he's not like getting his driver's license. He's working with his dad. You know. Yeah. So you've got that, but you've also got Simeon and Anna. These two near the end of life. Yeah. Like they're almost. They're waiting for God to do one more thing and then they're going to die. And so it's just amazing how all these stories are coming together so that nearly anybody that reads this can find themselves in the story. And I think that's just I think that's amazing how from the first chapters, Jesus is for everybody. Yeah, Jesus is for the whole world, and so I think that's interesting. Any takeaways that you kind of from this story?
I mean, if Mary and Joseph can take Jesus for granted, if the people closest to him, on the earth can take him for granted, then we do too. Yeah, we can too.
That's good.
And I think we can't just assume that when we go off to do what we're going to do, that he's on board with that he's with us. That we check in with him. And say, Jesus, what are you about today? What is your business about today? Because, I don't want to go off on my own. I don't want to have my own agenda and forget to know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really good. That's awesome. Well, all right. Hey, that's the third story. Yeah. This is 3 of 50. So if you've been tracking with us, this is 3 of 50. We're doing the 50 stories from the New Testament that we think everybody should know. And today we kind of put two together because we only have 50. Yeah. So we capped it at 50. So some of them we got to kind of combine to get everything in there. So, hey, thank you so much for watching today. And hey, do us a favor if this is helpful, this or some of the other kind of things that we're doing. Would you make sure, well, number one, you're subscribed. You click like on the video and then drop a comment down below if you want to kind of continue the conversation. We love seeing and reading feedback from people. But then also just it'd be a huge blessing to us if you could share this kind of in your social media circles, whether that's on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or anybody still using MySpace? You on MySpace? Look me up. Be on my top 8. MySpace, Lord. TikTok, I don't know how that works, but you do, so that's cool. Awesome. So y'all have a great day. God bless you.